It's me. I miss your face. I was just calling to say hi. Call me back. Bye. Hi. It's me. You guys just call me back when you have a chance. Bye.
She typed the name Shanann Watts into her phone long before she ever met her husband. Long before a single word passed between them. Before the so-called affair. Before the headlines. Before the murders that would shock the world. She searched the name of a woman she had no business knowing. A woman she'd never met. A woman she would one day help erase. At least, that's what some believe. She applied for a job at Anadarko Petroleum in early 2018. It was a career shift. A new beginning. That's what she told people. But out of all the companies in Colorado, why Anadarko? Why that location? Why just months before the Watts family was destroyed? Nichol Kessinger said it was chance. Timing. Coincidence. But coincidences don't tend to leave behind deleted search histories, cleared app data, and men in prison writing about things that scared them to the core. Chris Watts says she told him things he still refuses to repeat. He said she was involved in dark stuff. That she and her friends practiced things he didn't understand and didn't want to. He never told the FBI everything. Maybe he never could. But in a private letter, months after his world collapsed, he said it plainly. She wasn't who she said she was. He called her calculating. He said she pressured him, controlled him, disappeared when the blood was still drying. And yet, when questioned by police, she cried. She stuttered. She asked for water. She said she barely knew anything about his life. Except, she'd Googled Shanann. She'd looked at wedding dresses. She'd researched how to prepare for life with children you didn't give birth to. She knew. Long before the murders, she knew. That's what doesn't sit right with the people who've followed this case for years. That's what keeps the theories alive. Because when a woman searches a dead mother's name before ever dating the killer, that's not romance. That's a red flag. And this one's drenched in blood. She erased her digital footprint. She vanished after the murders. No trial. No court date. No accountability. Some say she's in witness protection. Others believe she left the country. But there are also those who believe she never needed to run, because no one was really looking. What if she was never just the other woman? What if this entire thing, every kiss, every lie, every step, was part of a plan? Not his. Hers. She Googled Shanann Watts before Chris ever said hello. Now ask yourself. Why? Was Chris telling the truth from his prison cell? Or was this a final lie from a man who refused to accept the weight of his own crimes? This isn't just a story about an affair. This is a story about a woman who walked into a married man's life, knowing exactly who he was. A woman who, for reasons still unexplained, was already watching his family before she met him. And a man who says she changed everything. Fast. Violently. Permanently. The Watts family is gone. The man who killed them is serving 5 life sentences. But one person walked away without a single charge. And this documentary asks the question no one in power ever dared to confront. What if Nichol Kessinger never stumbled into this story? What if she started it? She didn't fall into this by accident. She went looking for them. Nichol Kessinger was born in Colorado, but before she surfaced in this story, her digital footprint was faint. Her movements unclear. She had jobs, degrees, relationships, all the markings of a typical life. But by early 2018, she resurfaced in Colorado, freshly employed at Anadarko Petroleum. On paper, it was just a new job. Just a transfer. Just another face in the energy sector. But the name Chris Watts was easy to find. Public posts. Facebook photos. Smiling girls in matching outfits. Shanann's frequent live streams. Her life was an open book. It didn't take a detective to piece together the details of their family. And yet, before Chris Watts even knew her name, Nichol had already typed out Shanann's. She Googled her. Clicked. Searched again. She went to her social media. She watched her videos. There's no logical reason a woman would look up a stranger's wife unless she already knew of the man behind her. Or unless that woman already had an interest. And that's the part people can't ignore. Because by the time Chris and Nichol officially met in June of 2018, she already had knowledge of his wife. Knowledge she would later claim she never really had. She said she didn't even know Shanann was pregnant. She said she thought Chris was already separated. She said she didn't want to be involved in drama. But here's what the data tells us. She looked up wedding dresses. She searched for how to date a man with kids. She scrolled through Shanann's life like it was a catalog. She studied the woman she would later refer to as her lover's wife. Chris Watts was never invisible. He posted constantly. With Shanann. With his daughters. Their house was filled with reminders. Framed photos. Toys in the corners. Voices in the background. And yet, Nichol would have us believe she never suspected. Except, her phone didn't lie. The search history showed she'd looked up Shanann multiple times. The FBI questioned her on it. She claimed it was probably curiosity. But the searches were not from the day after meeting Chris. They were from before. And if that's true, if she searched Shanann before she ever met Chris, then what really brought her to Anadarko? Was it just another job? Or did she know more than she ever admitted? Anadarko wasn't a small company. But people talk. Schedules get shared. Routes overlap. And Chris was out in the oil fields. He was reachable. Some believe she orchestrated it. That she applied knowing he worked there. That she watched him from a distance, learned his schedule, and waited for the right moment. Because when Chris Watts finally did introduce himself to Nichol Kessinger, she didn't react like someone meeting a stranger. She reacted like someone who already knew his story. She didn't ask if he was married. She didn't question his sudden availability. She dove in headfirst, and never looked back. Within weeks, she was spending nights at his place. Within months, Shanann and the girls were gone. But this isn't just about an affair. This is about intent. Timing. Pattern. If she found Shanann before she met Chris. If she moved to Colorado right before applying to Anadarko. If she searched, deleted, and lied. Then what does that say about who she really was? There are no records of her telling friends about Chris in the early days. No one came forward saying she was confused or hesitant. Instead, what we have is a woman who slid into a man's life with incredible precision, and then vanished with even greater care. She wiped her phone. Deleted everything. Reset apps. The FBI had to pull her data from the cloud. Most people caught in a tragedy don't behave that way. But people who have something to hide? They do. In her interviews, she repeated the same lines. I didn't know. I didn't realize. I just wanted to help. But her search history told a different story. And her timing, it was just too perfect. She moved to Colorado. Got the job. Met the man. And then, everything fell apart. If you believe in chance, maybe that's all this was. But if you believe in patterns, in strategy, then Nichol Kessinger wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was exactly where she wanted to be. This wasn't passion. It was premeditation. And it may have been something darker. The internet holds memory better than the human mind. Click by click. Search by search. And Nichol Kessinger left a trail. Wedding dresses. Can mistress turn into wife? How to prepare for a new life with children. Shanann Watts. Again. And again. But those were just the beginning. Mixed in with the romantic daydreams were searches that chilled investigators. How to delete messages. How to wipe an iPhone. Can cops recover deleted texts? Amber Fry and Scott Peterson. It wasn't what someone looks up when they're falling in love. It was what someone studies when they know it's going to end badly, and they want to control the outcome. She deleted entire text threads. Removed entire messaging apps. Reset phone settings the day before police first questioned her. And when asked why, she simply said, "I panicked." Panic is a moment. But what she did was methodical. Apps weren't just deleted. They were scrubbed. Timelines were wiped. Conversations were removed before officers even arrived. She'd had hours. She used them. Investigators later recovered some of the data. But parts of it? Gone forever. And then, there's what Chris Watts wrote from prison. "She was into dark stuff," he said. "She had friends who made me uncomfortable. They scared me. She said things I can't repeat." The man who murdered his entire family sat in a concrete cell and claimed he wasn't the darkest person in the room. He blamed her, not for the act, but for the mindset. He said she influenced him, drained him, isolated him. And if that sounds like deflection, maybe it is. But it's not just Chris who said it. Online sleuths dug deeper. Forums exploded. Reddit threads multiplied. People began to piece together a version of Nichol the public hadn't seen. They noticed the tattoos. Symbols that didn't seem random. Phrases that echoed ancient texts. They traced connections, friends, events, language. Some tied to modern spirituality. Others to something older. Darker. One recurring theory? Nichol wasn't just involved in an affair. She was involved in ritual. That the relationship had rules. That it was a transaction. That Chris was being used, not seduced. He changed quickly after meeting her. That much is clear. He stopped eating at home. Stopped calling Shanann back. Stopped smiling in photos with his daughters. And the timing? Coincided with long hours at work, or so he claimed. But even when he was home, he was distant. Zoned out. Secretive. Watching his phone like it held power over him. People say that's what infatuation looks like. But others say, no, it's manipulation. Mental. Emotional. Maybe even spiritual. Chris, by his own admission, had never cheated before. He was passive. Quiet. A routine man. But within weeks of meeting Nichol, he was planning a future without his family. He told friends he didn't want the baby. He told Nichol he had no way out. And yet, he never once told Shanann he was leaving. Why? Why would a man so desperate for escape never ask for a divorce? Unless he believed that wasn't an option. Unless he was convinced there was only one way. In his letters from prison, Chris talks about dark energy. He describes moments where he felt outside of himself. He says Nichol talked about reincarnation. About cleansing the past. He said, "She made me feel like I was living someone else's life. Like I'd woken up inside the wrong body." Whether that's an excuse or a confession, it adds a chilling layer. Because Nichol wasn't just Googling dresses and recipes. She was Googling Shanann's name on the night she disappeared. And the next morning. And again 2 days later. Why would someone do that? Why would someone search for the woman her boyfriend had just killed, unless she was waiting to see if the plan had worked? The public timeline says she didn't know Shanann was missing until the news broke. But her phone says otherwise. She Googled her before the media reported it. She watched videos. Read news stories that didn't yet exist. And the silence in her responses? It's deafening. She didn't call police. Didn't stop seeing Chris. Didn't warn Shanann. Even after the murders, she hesitated to come forward. When she finally did speak to detectives, she said she was shocked. But she didn't cry. Didn't ask about the girls. Didn't break down when describing Chris's confession. Instead, she asked if her name would be made public. She asked about her job. She asked if people would see her face. It was self-preservation. Cold. Measured. Chris was arrested. Charged. Sentenced. Nichol Kessinger disappeared. But the questions didn't. Why did she search for Shanann before the affair? Why did she lie about knowing Chris was married? Why did she wipe her phone before police could see it? And why did Chris, even from a concrete cell, whisper about dark things? And say that Nichol and her friends still haunted him? The story the world knows is a man who killed his family for an affair. But the story behind that story is still unfolding. And it starts with a search bar, a deleted message, and a woman who may have come to Colorado with more than love on her mind. He changed overnight. Was he brainwashed, or used? Chris Watts wasn't the type of man you'd expect to see on a true crime special. Quiet, soft-spoken, predictable to a fault. A man who loved routine, early mornings, protein shakes, family selfies. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't reckless. But after meeting Nichol Kessinger, everything unraveled. It began slowly. He started working out more. Not for health, he already did that. But now it was for someone else. He started caring about how he looked in a way he never had. New clothes. New cologne. He grew secretive. Less engaged at home. Short texts to Shanann. Silent dinners. Distant glances. Then it escalated. He stopped answering his wife's calls. Claimed he fell asleep early, every night. Claimed he was tired from work, every day. He slept in the basement. Missed doctor's appointments. Missed milestones. While Shanann was posting ultrasound photos, Chris was booking hotel rooms with Nichol. According to coworkers, he was different. Colder. Zoned out. Like a man under a spell. Psychologists call it trauma bonding. Manipulation that doesn't feel like control until it's too late. And by then, the victim is doing things they never thought they'd do. Chris told investigators, "She made me feel alive again." But what did she take in return? Step by step, Nichol isolated him. She spoke ill of Shanann, downplayed his marriage, flattered his ego, pulled him closer, while making sure he pulled away from everyone else. She didn't just replace Shanann. She erased her. She wanted the life Shanann had built, but without the baggage. No ex-wife. No child support. No judgment. No obstacles. And Chris? He became willing to give it to her. Nichol Googled when to say I love you. Just days before the murders. A romantic search on the surface. But chilling in context. Because at that moment, Shanann was still alive. The girls were still alive. Yet Nichol was preparing for the next step, as if Shanann was already gone. Chris, too, was preparing. In his own warped way. He told Nichol he was separating. That Shanann knew. That they were working things out. Lies. All of them. He never told Shanann he wanted a divorce. He told Nichol what she wanted to hear. Some say he was leading a double life. But others say he was no longer in control of either. Was it love? Lust? Or something more sinister? Chris described feeling trapped in a fog. Of not recognizing himself. Of believing, somehow, that his family was the problem. That if they were gone, things would be fine. That life would begin again. He said the murders weren't planned. That something just snapped. But snap implies pressure. Pressure from where? And from whom? Nichol Kessinger wasn't there when Chris wrapped his hands around his wife's neck. Or when he smothered his daughters with a blanket in the back seat. But her presence loomed. Like a voice in his head. A future he could almost taste. She wanted a clean slate. And he gave it to her, in blood. The question is, did he offer it freely? Or did she whisper the idea, plant the seed, stroke his ego, pull him deeper? Until he believed it was his idea? That's what makes this case different. More than a murder. More than an affair. It was transformation. Fast. Radical. Unnatural. Chris Watts didn't just break. He was broken. By someone who knew exactly how to do it. And when the killings were done, she Googled wedding dresses. The same morning his family's bodies were stuffed into oil tanks. She typed, "Wedding dresses in Colorado." While Shanann was still being reported missing. She didn't flinch. She didn't mourn. She moved on. She was designing her new life. With him. Where was Nichol the night the family vanished? It's the question that lingers. That festers. That refuses to go away. Chris has never claimed she was present during the murders. And Nichol? She insists she was home. Alone. But phone data doesn't lie. Her location pings that night, and early into the next morning, place her near Frederick, Colorado. Near the Watts home. Near the oil site. She said she was Googling news of the case out of fear. That she was scared. Confused. That Chris had lied to her, and she was trying to figure out what was going on. But again, the timeline doesn't add up. She searched Shanann's name before the media knew she was missing. She looked up wedding dresses before Chris confessed. She deleted data before she spoke to police. And when investigators brought her in for questioning, she didn't come alone. She brought her father. And when she struggled to answer, he leaned in. Coaching. Redirecting. Interrupting. Telling her what to say, and what not to. Why? Why would a grown woman, terrified that her lover just murdered his family, need her father to help her tell the truth? Unless it wasn't the whole truth. Unless there was more. And she knew it. Was she at the house that night? Was she nearby? Some believe she followed Chris. Others believe she waited for him. There's even speculation, never proven, that she met with him afterward. He never said it. But then again, he's never told the full truth either. And Nichol? She vanished from public life the moment her name was leaked. But not before erasing the digital footprints that placed her near the crime. She deleted her life. And then disappeared. Gone from social media. No trace of her digital presence. Accounts wiped. Photos vanished. Even her LinkedIn, scrubbed. Nichol Kessinger didn't just go into hiding. She deleted herself. Was she placed in witness protection? It's been speculated. Some believe the government protected her from public backlash. Others believe it was self-preservation. That she saw what was coming and acted fast. She said she was like Amber Fry, Scott Peterson's mistress. An innocent woman caught in a storm. But Amber Fry came forward. She cried in court. She helped the prosecution. Nichol? Never testified. Never apologized. Never answered the public's questions. She didn't act like a woman shattered by betrayal. She acted like a woman covering her tracks. And there's evidence, unconfirmed, but disturbing, that she had plans to be with Chris after the murders. Search histories showed apartment listings. New job openings. Baby names. Chris said she talked about starting fresh. But only if he could take care of it. Did she manipulate him to kill? Did she watch? Or was she always the one pulling the strings? Theory 1. Nichol orchestrated the murder from the shadows. Used psychology, sex, and isolation to push Chris over the edge. She never touched a weapon. But she pulled every string. Theory 2. She was obsessed with the family, and wanted it for herself. Watched Shanann online for months. Moved to Anadarko for proximity. Planned to erase Shanann, not just replace her. Theory 3. She was into the occult, ritualistic symbols, spiritual manipulation. Chris mentioned dark energy, possession, otherworldly influence. Could she have believed the murders were a form of cleansing? Theory 4. She was just a mistress who panicked and lied, but didn't kill. No occult. No Ma. Haunting every corner of a case the world still can't look away from. Because this wasn't just a family tragedy. It was something darker. And maybe it didn't start with Chris Watts. Maybe it started with a search. A woman. A plan. And a question whispered in the dark. What would you do to get the life you think you deserve? 3 innocent lives gone. A father turned killer. And a mistress whose story still doesn't add up. What do you believe? Was Nichol Kessinger just the other woman, or the mastermind? Drop your theory in the comments. Let's talk about it. Argue it. Question everything. And if you want more true crime stories that go deeper than the headlines, hit subscribe. Because here, the truth isn't just told, it's uncovered.